What's up, guys? How you doing? This is Micah Dobbins, host of the Micah Dobbins Show, powered by Misfits of Media. And I'm extremely excited about our guest today. I have Mr. Frank Zaaqan Jordan, who is a 10-time award-winning author of 7 books, and a historian. So be sure that you guys tune in to catch this exclusive interview here on the Micah Dobbins Show. All right, guys, so we're glad that you're here tonight. Again, as I mentioned, our guest is none other than Frank Zaaqan Jordan. Hey, Brother Frank, how you doing?
Hey, I'm all right. Brother Micah. How's everything with yourself?
Oh, great. Can't complain. Wouldn't change nothing if I did. That's what I usually say. All right. Well, I wanted to bring you on. We definitely was excited to have someone that's a historian and that likes to study data. And I actually had ordered a book. So once I get the study in and get the reading in, we definitely want to have more conversations in reference directly to the book. But in the meantime, could you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and some of the journey that it took to become a historian?
Oh yeah. Born and raised in Brooklyn, of course.
Right.
I would probably say around maybe in the early '80s to the late '80s. There was just, let's just put it out there. There was no Black education available. Whether it was in school or whether it was in advanced study school, it was just no Black education available out there. Especially back then.
Yes.
Through traveling, through nights at the library, throughout New York City and throughout actually different states, you come to find history, is actually a little bit different than you were taught.
True.
In school. A lot of times, history, especially back in the, in the 70s, in the early 70s, as far as, white supremacy, you really didn't have, especially the neighborhood that I grew up in, which was an all Black neighborhood, but I had to walk at least about maybe 3 miles to the nearest library, which was Brooklyn Heights. And once you got there, the only thing that was available to you was books, and you learned about George Washington, Ben Franklin,
Yes.
Sir Isaac Newton, and those guys like that. But there was no Black history available at all until I became maybe about 19, 20 years old into studying. And I found things to be quite different, Michael, quite different.
Oh, yeah. No, I can only imagine because you're right. I remember even growing up, my father being military, we would bounce around from base to base. And there was not a lot of books and things available back then at all. My father, tried to instill some things in us. And of course, they would talk about the usual suspects, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, things like that. But as far as going beyond that, that was pretty much kind of like the surface level when it came to wanting to study or get research. And I do know that is something that many in our community are lacking even to this day. I think if they at least got a sense of history and some of the things that you studied, that they would kind of have a sense of pride of how they carry themselves and to know where they've come from. So that's awesome. Okay. Now, as far as your journey in your studies, do you find it, I don't know, times where it's challenging when trying to get to original manuscripts or documentation? Because that's one thing that I've always done. I've always been searching and wanting to get things. And I want an original green book, the Negro Motorist Green Book. And I can't find an original, you know what I mean? So do you find the same struggle when you do your research, trying to get original literature or slave manuals or anything that is hard to get nowadays?
Right. You want to know something? That's an interesting. That's very interesting that you said that, the Green Book,
Yes.
Because actually I wrote about the Green Book in my book We Once Were a Family, and a lot of people don't know what the Green Book is. And the Green Book was actually a navigational book,
Yes.
for Blacks during the time of segregation. And it detailed, where all the Black businesses were throughout the United States, and which were the Black businesses were safe for us to go and for us to travel to and from to. Now, it's funny to what you just said. Here in North Carolina, they actually had an original Green Book on a slave plantation called the Stagville Plantation in Durham, North Carolina. They actually had one as an exhibit for an entire month. It was a little tattered and a little tated a little bit.
Right.
But they actually had it. It's amazing. They had it from segregation. And inside the book, it was fascinating. It was fascinating. All the states in alphabetical order and all the black businesses, the hotels, the barbershops, the schools.
Yes.
You had farmers you can get in contact with. You had black insurance, black hospitals, black hotels. Yeah. I mean, and everything was black owned. It wasn't that we just worked there. You had a black manager or a black director.
Right.
No, this was engineered, and erected by blacks. Alphabetical order from state to state. That was genius. I got the chills when I seen it.
Right. And see, that's what I've been trying to find one ever since I like came into studying it. I was like, yo, I gotta get one. And everybody on eBay and all these, they have like replicas and fake copies. But I'm like, I want an original. And I even did a show because I do a thing called Reflections in History where I talk about different historical things. And that was one of the things I asked the audience. I said, hey, if y'all ever get a chance to see a real original Negro Motors Green Book, that could be a great birthday gift for Mike. trying to finesse me one, but I can't find one nowhere.
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. Go ahead.
And go into and let me say this too, right? You can go into a lot of colleges like Harvard. You can go into a lot of the Ivy School League colleges, which blacks pretty much stay away from because they actually think that it's all European history in there. Right. Hey, listen, I got news for you, brother Micah. It's more of our history inside those white Ivy League schools, than a lot of black people care to know, because what they do and what they're taught, mostly in those schools when they study history, not only their forefathers' history, but they're studying our history that we don't know as well, too, the greatness of blacks as well, too.
Oh, wow. See, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that out because that's something that I think people need to do. It's just you're encouraging them that, hey, don't just settle with, well, I'm not going there because that's Harvard or that's Yale. You know what I mean? I want to hear what they got to say, MIT. You might, like you said, find some jewels up in there if you just go and do the research and the study, and a lot of those schools, if you get a visitor's pass, they'll let you even go into the library. You may not necessarily be a student per se, but if you're just going because you want to get some research, I'm sure there's some ways you can go navigate through to make that happen.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because really, to be honest with you, a lot of white Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, Oxford, when you go to those schools, hey, listen, they're preparing actually to keep us actually in mental slavery. So they have to study us. They have to study us. They have to study our history. They have to study what we like, what we don't like, how we move, how we spend our money, and where we live at, how much money black men spend in a year, black women spend in a year. And what they do, they're actually preparing to really pretty much, keep us where we're at, to really much run their fathers and their mothers' corporations, that generational wealth that's passed down to them when they get out of school. Their father saying, hey, listen, Simon Bexley, hey, listen, I want you to take over the business. This is what you have to do. This is what they like. This is where you conduct your store in the neighborhood. This is the percentage on blacks, what they buy, the soda that they like to drink, basketball teams, clothing that they like to wear. This is what they learn in school. We're the only ones. Hey, brother Michael, let me say this. We're the only ones that go to school. Not everybody. I can't put that on everybody. But the majority of black people today, we're the only ones that go to school to work for white Americans. When you go to school and you go to school for engineering, you don't really want to own an engineering company. You want to work for the best engineering company possible. When you go to school, you take up computer programming and you want to be, you don't want to own a hospital, or want to open up your own practice. You want to work for the best hospital that's going to pay you. So what you're doing, you're setting your price as you're in school. You're already setting your price already. You're setting yourself low at a low ball already by wanting to work for someone. How about owning that hospital? How about wanting to own the hospital? How about wanting to own and manage? If you want to go to school for management, business management, how about coming out and open up your own grocery store in a black neighborhood and owning the store and actually hiring our own people?
All right. No. Valid point. And one of the things, as you were saying that, I thought about it too. There was a documentary I remember, and they had us watch called Merchants of Cool, which kind of referenced those studies like you were saying. Like they were showing how the people from, I believe it was, I want to call the company out, but it was a very big company that hired these guys to do like case studies. And they would talk to teenagers and say, hey, so what are you wearing? What do you think is cool? Where do you like to go? What do you like to hang out with? and they would actually market products based off that. And now through social media, it's even easier because it's like, yo, we're going to find out what you're doing. You might search something on Google, and a day later, 10 of it is all up and down Facebook or on YouTube, whatever, for ads and stuff. So yes, it is something that's tragic that's going on to that regard as far as marketing directly to our people in such a way, a stealth way, where they may not be aware that they're spending money frivolously that they could be saving to invest in their community or to start their own businesses. Because that's one of the things that as we homeschool our children, because I got 6, and that's one thing we've been telling them is like, hey, I want you to think about owning a company. My son, I remember as a young inventor, because he likes to make things. And I remember when he was a little boy, he came to me and he said, Daddy, I said, yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah, he was showing me what he built, and he was like, one day I want to grow up, I'm going to work for NASA. I said, no, son, I need you to build a NASA, build a competitor, build something that NASA would have to purchase from you. And he was like, yeah, like a light bulb moment. So I agree. We definitely need to push ownership. I think that's one of the things it's going to take to even turn the tide around and reverse some of the negative statistics that are labeled upon us today. All right, cool.
Hey, listen, because Micah, listen, in all my books, what I do, in the last chapter, I always put unknown Black inventors in the last chapter. Not, pretty much everybody, is really, they really know the surface of Black inventors. You can have somebody like Lewis Latimer. He invented, the filament that lights the bulb up, because Thomas Edison, he didn't invent the light bulb. He just invented the glass shell to go around it.
All right.
So Lewis Latimer invented the filament, to light the bulb up. So you can invent, you can engineer a piece of glass. It's just a soda bottle. Soda bottle is a soda bottle's glass without the soda put in it. So the product to put in it. So our kids have to learn. Like, listen, this is you look. Alexander Mills is a Black man. He invented the elevator in 1887. Sarah Boone, ironing board, 1892. John Standard, the refrigerator in 1891. So these are like our forefathers who've actually invented. Listen, Gladys Mae West, she invented the GPS system. This lady is still alive today. How much credit does she get for that?
Right. That's true.
This is a Black woman that was just interviewed on an interview that's on my page. A Black woman that invented the GPS system. How many people know this woman is still alive today? Right.
No, that makes a very valid point. And I mean, even like, it's funny because as you're bringing those names up, it's just different people. I'm thinking about so many, they don't get the credit they deserve. I remember I was with a young couple from Chicago, a brother of mine named Darion, and we were talking, and his wife, and I brought up, we were talking about just different medical advances. And of course, Henrietta Lacks. I know you already know who she is, but she came up. And I'm like, well, the HeLa from Henrietta Lacks. And that's where they get all these, different vaccines and different cancer treatments and all this medicine and how they're able to treat things. And we actually had to go try to find like the movie, because they were like, what? And we looked it up. The movie didn't really do it justice, but just to know that it was a Black sister that, had that actual cells that they were able to use to make those advances. And even as you shared all of those different inventions, even the GPS, as much as we use it today, it's rarely, back in the day, we had MapQuest where you're typing up directions to somebody's crib and trying to find it. But with the GPS, it's like, boom, 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 address, and it's navigating you, So there's so many unsung heroes in the Black community.
And listen, Micah, how many times you hit that GPS on your phone or in your car, and you actually say that a Black woman invented this right here, the coordinates, the math. She actually created the coordinates of the entire Earth. Okay, wow. And they created it into a GPS system. How many times do people do that and they say, wow, my sister, she's still living today. See?
Right. They got to give her flowers while she's living. We got to get her on for real. Like, we got to celebrate her while she's living for real.
There you go.
Instead of waiting until somebody gone and be like, did you know yonder year? Nah, this is now.
There you go, brother.
Cool. No, I'm glad to hear that. And that's why I wanted to check into the book and everything. And I wanted to know, how did it feel when you like published your first book? When you actually like completed one and you knew like, yo, this is it. I'm done with my first book. What kind of feeling did you get just from that accomplishment?
Good and bad. I'm my worst critic.
All right.
I'm my worst critic. Everything that I put in my first book, not just coincidence. It was basically pretty much just outlining the nuances and everyday occurrences that Black people go through every day. and lining them up with history and biblical, scriptures.
Yeah.
So it's not a coincidence that the same thing that we face in history, 400 years ago is the same thing that's happening today. Most of the stuff, if not all of the things that we're going through also is written in the scriptures in Deuteronomy 28 chapter, and I locked everything up. Actually, to be honest with you, I was very critical. I was really hard on myself on that book.
Right.
But actually, you want to know something, Micah? That was actually one of my best-selling books.
Wow.
And for some strange reason, Amazon took it out of the catalog 8 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been back and forth in court with those guys for, I would say, maybe 5 years now. Yeah. And that book sold so many copies in so little time. Yeah. That's not just a coincidence, right?
Oh, yeah. Now, I've definitely had battles. I'm not going to say the company because they already banned one of my videos before, and I'm not going to mess with them again. But I've definitely had a situation where I put some information out, and I actually, this is the crazy part. I was just citing the story. It was a story that actually came out on a major news network. And this is when we were still doing like a radio show with the show. And I just happened to blurt out like, well, this is going on with this company versus this company. This was the lawsuit. And that company, not only did they shut it down, they flagged and shut everything. Like the video's gone now. And I was like, okay. I see how they get there. So I can imagine that feeling wasn't to see the plights and then to see a company do something like that. It almost was like theft. I remember, because I've published just one book. I haven't done 7 though. I've only done 1. And I remember when I published my first book, it was more of a testimonial, like my life story. So it was a completion, but it was also kind of sad too, because I knew like, okay, this is it. Once I put this out here, you can't get it back. Like you've given it to the world and they can run with it. You know what I mean? If somebody wants to dissect it and do a class and just shred through it, they're shredding through, your life. You know what I mean? And once you put yourself to that, and it's hard to separate yourself when you're married to your writing, your authorship, because you're putting you in it and just telling your experience. And to see somebody take it and make it something else, I could just imagine that just them taking it away is rough enough. Now, has it changed your writing process since then, as far as when you write after completing the first one? Do you find it gets easier or better, or is it like, man, I'm overcritical, I'm just even harder now because I want to outdo the first one? Like, what's changed?
Yeah, actually, you want to know something? Actually, getting good feedback from the people that buy your books, that's what keeps you going. Like, actually, when I was writing my first book, Micah, I actually had my second one already in my head already. I said I'm not going to put too much in this one, but I said the next one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a more of an explanation on the second chapter that I wrote in the second one, in the first one. So I already had the second one in my head when I was writing the first one. Yeah, I mean, it got better over time because, like I said, when the people actually, when they write you, when they email you, when they go and, when they make critiques about your book, sometimes you can find yourself, with a niche, that's a lot better than what you really thought. You're like, wow, like you really like that? Like, you really like that? So, the chapter that I wrote, like that really came across to you well, like, wow, you were really, and to have someone say that I didn't know that, or that changed my whole perspective or trajectory on the way I look at certain things now. Whoa, that's the best feeling. I've done my job, Micah. I've done my job. For someone to actually go and read your book and say, I took it further and I researched it myself. Okay, I took it further and researched myself, and your book actually literally changed my whole way of thinking of history of America. I've done my job.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. No, for real. And you hit the nail on the head. Kind of what you were describing reminds me sometimes. I remember when people would say that they might have created music or done something, and they're like, well, I did a whole album, and this one particular song, the record label was like, that's going to be the one we're going to release. And you're like, that's the one? And you realize that it changes everybody. You're like, well, I guess it ain't so bad after all, as long as I did it, So that's cool that you were able, because that's one of the things I think that all authors look for is, and not so much as just a validation, but just to know that their work mattered, that somebody took the time to read it and to digest it and understand it. And I can definitely agree that when somebody gives you the positive feedback, it can send you through the roof. I've had Some both. I mean, sometimes you get negative criticisms. I remember one time somebody was like, the only problem I had is it was too short. I wish you could have did more, or you should have told more of this story, more of that. And you're like, I'm already hard enough. If only y'all know how hard I come down already. But to have that kind of feedback, the positive definitely outweighs the negative, in my opinion. Like the more love you get, the stronger you feel.
Do you know how many artists, when they pass on, or when they're still alive, someone gets a hold of the music that they never generated or they put out in public, and that was the music that they didn't like, and you're like, my goodness, like, why didn't you put this out? It's the same thing with writing. Like a lot of times, people would tell me I would have things written down in paper all over the house, and someone would say, why didn't you put that in the book? And I'd be like, I just didn't think it was that important to put it, and the flow wasn't right, so I didn't put it. I'll put it in the next one. So we're actually greater than what we think and what we know. We're just writing because you have that gift. Like you record music because you have that gift. But it's actually the people who actually will be the critics, to really keep you going and keep you flowing.
Yep. Yes. No, you're right. Now, let me ask you, what type of obstacles have you had to face as a writer, especially when you're sharing like Black history and things that most people don't want to be released? We know like the Daughters of Confederacy did a good job covering a lot of history. So what kind of obstacles have you faced just encountering these things when trying to publish the truth?
Yeah, I'm going to show you a couple. I caught putting this picture of Socrates in this book.
Oh,
this
wow.
is a picture of Socrates. Socrates is a Black man, okay?
Wow, yeah.
The same as Aristotle.
Okay.
I had to go through a lot, just to get those pictures published, in the book. The same with these pictures right here with William Shakespeare.
Right.
William Shakespeare is a Black man. Right. And you got to ask yourself, why don't these people want these, this type of stuff, inside books? It all has to do with self-esteem, and it all has to do with greatness. How many people know William Shakespeare is Black? Listen, I got news for you. Over in England, listen, look, William Shakespeare, look up and listen. I can't make this up.
All right.
Look up, Google the word, not now.
Okay.
Google William Shakespeare plays and put the word Black in there, specifically Black. All of William Shakespeare plays, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, King Henry VI, all of those plays were actually written about Black people. And when you look at the format, and when you look at scene 5, act 2, scene 5, they're actually defining themselves as Black people. Romeo and Juliet defined themselves. Romeo defined Juliet Black about maybe 5 or 6 times. In that. The same as, Edward the Black Prince, and they all define themselves as Black people. So a lot of times, if William Shakespeare is Black and the world doesn't know that, why would he be writing a play about white people? So me personally, I got a problem with that when my kids go to school and they're learning about people who really didn't exist. But they were great Black people. I got a problem with that. I got a great problem with that, because that's the best form of white supremacy, to teach young Black kids, that the greatest people on this earth were Caucasian people when they weren't.
Oh, yeah. Now, I can understand that. And I mean, that's one of those topics I know that I've seen a lot of people get, they go to debate. Boy, you talking about starting up some trouble. They get mad over it. And I know that we do have a lot of history that has been whitewashed. I've definitely haven't fully gone back into Shakespearean history. I'm familiar with his writings, obviously, because they made everybody read it, of course, in literature-wise. And I know that a lot of people early on, I remember, who was it first that I remember kind of brought out some of those points? And it became a big contention, even in like the intellectual community and other communities, and people went back and forth over it for a while. And then it kind of died down a little bit. So I've definitely heard something to that effect before. I just definitely have to go back myself and do more research on it, because that's something that I know people are going to fire off.
Micah, listen, over in England, over in Germany, there, William Shakespeare, it's a theater over there called the William Shakespeare Theater. It's called the Blackfriars Club. On that one.
All right.
To this day, it's still called the Black Friars Club.
All right.
That one, brother.
All right, cool. Now let me ask you, what's been your passion or your motivation for writing? Like, what drives you to make you want to, publish a book?
Self-esteem, baby. Self-esteem. Self-esteem. Listen, if I look, this is a picture of Beethoven right here.
Yeah.
Okay. If our kids knew the greatness, one of the greatest composers, okay, on this planet, okay, this is a picture of Beethoven. If our kids knew the greatness, okay, of us, okay, it would actually insinuate them and tap into their brains and say, wow, I can do that as well too. Daniel Hale Williams, okay, back during the time of segregation, erected a hospital called the Providence Hospital in Chicago. It was a all-black hospital, okay, for all black people. It dubbed as a training facility for RN nurses, okay, right, and doctors as well too. A lot of people don't know that. Dr. Right. Daniel Hale Williams was the first black doctor who performed open heart surgery. It was an all-black hospital. A lot of right. people don't talk about that as well either. Black engineers, they erected that hospital, okay?
That's true.
Poirot, she was the one who taught Madam C.J. Walker. She actually erected a beauty school in St. Louis for black women. A lot of this stuff goes under the curve. And a lot of people don't know about stuff like this because why? Because if your kids knew that she can do it or Dr. Daniel Hale Williams can do it, guess what they would do, Brother Micah?
Right.
They would do the same thing.
Oh, yeah, they try to jump out and do it. True. Right. And I think that's important. Believe it or not, a lot of people who are even watching now, you have to understand. A lot of people, though, I do know that is an issue as far as positive imagery for their children, and it helps to build esteem. Unfortunately, when they did a study years ago, I remember they had like little girls and they would let them look at, different dolls, and one might be a white doll, one would be a black doll, and the young lady would prefer the white doll. And it was like, well, why? Even though she was black. So I do know that is definitely something that is necessary and needed. And that's one of the reasons why when I do reflections in history, sometimes I pull various stories, but I like to highlight different periods of history that have been buried or forgotten, or that people have moved on past. And I try to make it a point to bring that out even in the show so that people will go back and research these things. So I think that's awesome. So when you're researching, the passion is to build self-esteem, to bring an awareness to some things. Now, I want to ask you this. You've published 7 books, which we know is no easy feat. It's definitely rough to get through 1, much less to get 7 completed. And a lot of people set their goals. They say, I'm going to write a book, but they never even get to book number 1. Like they sit there and say, I'm going to write a book, do you find that writing like energizes you? Does it exhaust you after you finish? And are there times where you question like, well, what kind of legacy am I leaving behind while I'm writing? These are just some questions that ponder up in my mind when speaking about authorship.
You know what? It really doesn't dawn on me as I'm writing really what I'm doing. It's just that I have so much, and I got a collection of over 1,000 history books. It really doesn't dawn on me what I'm doing at the time. In my mind frame, what keeps me going and what excites me is that this information that I'm writing in this book, wow, how is it going to affect and how is it going to change, black kids, black adults, and that's mostly what it's all about. It's really the redirection and the resurgence of American education, because it's very flawed. If your kid is still going to school and they still teaching them, talking about Chris Columbus discovered America and he came and shook hands with the Indians, hey, I beg to differ with that. I'm insulted, Micah, I'm insulted that that's even still in a history book. Everybody was up in arms, and when they was taking down all the Confederate statues, and oh my goodness, what are we doing? That's part of American history. Yeah, I get it, but I'm gonna tell you like this, Columbus, how many bridges, how many schools, how many hospitals, that Columbus has throughout America, how many streets? You would literally have to burn this whole place down. Sir Walter Raleigh, that Raleigh, North Carolina is named after. This guy had more slaves probably than Thomas Jefferson, okay? Wow. And he enslaved the North American Indians. They have statues of Sir Walter Raleigh all over Raleigh, North Carolina. And like I said, this place was founded, and hey, Brother Mike, I know I'm not telling you something that you don't already know. No, this place was founded, solely, off of crooks and thieves. And I'm putting that very mildly. And history has a way of pinpointing that. And also history has a way of actually curtailing it, to their benefit,
Right.
as far as like these were good people. Ask the North American Indians what happened to them. The president Andrew Jackson in 1830, look up the Removal Act. He removed the Indians,
Right.
Sioux Indians, Blackfoots off of their land, okay, and promised to give them back. He had them write over 300 treaties, okay, and broke every last single one and told them you can come back on your land after we finish, what we have to do and running the railroad tracks through this. You can come back. So when the Indians came back, Brother Micah, that's a story that they don't tell you about. Lewis and Clark had a hand in that as well, too. They had you in school thinking Lewis and Clark was these two guys that just explored through America, shaking people's hands, and, buying them, Bojangle biscuits. But that's not the case. That's not the case. Lewis and Clark was two of the biggest crooks, okay, in history. And let me hit you with this. That's where the term Indian giver came from. When the Indians came back and asked for their land back, you had the Confederate soldiers and you had the Civil War soldiers back then saying, how are you gonna ask for a land back that you gave us? And they was calling them Indian givers. You gave us this land. No,
they take it back.
They stole it. So that's where the term Indian giver came from. A lot of people don't even know that. And now they got the Indians, the Sioux Indians pushed up in North and South Dakota, okay, in what they call reservations, okay, and it looks worse than east side of Detroit. All right, everybody's an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah. Now, I've definitely heard about the reservations. That's deep there. I was going to ask you, too, because we were talking about the subject of American history. Rick Santorum recently did a lecture at a university, and he had made this statement that, America was birthed from nothing. They're like, basically, some guys just came over here, we just built this, and he's, oh, well, of course there were some Native Americans, but nothing in America today resembles anything they stood for. I was like, yo, how you just gonna say it came from nothing?
Right. So you mean to tell me when Columbus came over here, there was nobody over here. The gold, there was nothing over here that steal, and either the Indians didn't put up a fight or nothing. There was nobody over. The smallpox that he created, there was a
Right. No, I laugh about that, but it's in all seriousness though. It is a serious matter because I do notice that particularly even like you said with the Confederate history of the country, a lot of the bases that were named after Confederate generals, and a lot of people didn't even come to the being aware of these things. That was one of the problems that I caught early on, even when speaking with friends and different people about the monuments. And right now, even in Georgia, we're having a situation where Stone Mountain has always been kind of like a Confederate memorial mountain. When I first moved here, it was like 92. A lot of black people we don't really go to Stone Mountain like that. Or when they do go, they were like, don't go past a certain time because, they ride through with the Confederate flags and they, woo, whistling Dixie and so on, And I remember going out there for the laser show. And, and they have they play all the different Confederates, all different things, and I was just like, yo, this is really going down. You know what I mean? I went up the mountain like, this is really going down. But they just did something new recently. The governor of Georgia actually got a black man to be the president over the Stone Mountain Commission, which is the first in his 60-plus year history, I guess they say. And today I heard them asking them about what are some changes, because they're like, are you going to remove the Confederate soldiers off the side of the mountain? Are you going to change, So it's weird because we're in a weird time in Georgia because on one hand he was saying, well, there's hundreds of acres at Stone Mountain. And we're thinking about just taking this 50 plot of acres and just making that like a Confederate memorial and changing all the rest and putting a freedom center on top of the mountain. And I was like, yo, they finna kick this dude out. He not gonna make it. I said, they gonna kick you out, bro. But the mountain has actually been losing money since Stone Mountain, went private, and you had, some portion of the state involved with it, but they've been losing money as far as tourist attractions because right now people are really up in arms about a lot of the Confederacy, a lot of the things that have been celebrated and taught. And I had to explain to a friend because they didn't quite get why it was such a upsetting thing or why so many people were so emotionally attached or involved. And I had to kind of help them to kind of see when you've been shown these things. We grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard. And I remember when I was a kid, I was riding in the car with my mom, my older brother, and we seen a Dodge Charger fly by. And me being a kid, seeing the Dukes of Hazzard, I'm like, go General Lee! They were like, what? I'm like, what? It's the good old boys. You know what I mean? So we learn these things growing up and don't really consider, alternative, history or things that are going on. And then when we finally get a chance to embrace or learn of something, it can be stripped away. So I'm glad that you're able to even discuss those things and we're even able to kind of go over it. I think that that's part of making things better. If you don't really address the past and settle it and fix it, you know what I mean? If you don't really educate people on it, because I've had family members who, have watched the documentary 13th and, they're white or Caucasian, and when they saw the documentary, they were like, I had no idea. And they're like, whoa, this is really happening. And then, I would get to talk with them. And I remember one situation, I've had on 2 occasions. I was with a guy on the north side, and he was like, yeah, we were talking about the police and different things police do. And, I'm black, he's white, me and this guy talking, he says, hey, I remember me and my friends were drinking one time, and we were drinking and driving. Man, they pulled us over there down by Roswell Road, and after they pulled us over, they seen the bottles, they just poured it out and, let us go home. Well, they wrote us a ticket, and I'm like, hold on. Y'all had open bottles? And all y'all got was a ticket and poured out and went home? Bro, do you not know what they would have done in Decatur if they would have caught you with an open container driving? Right. Over. You was going to have a bad night, no matter who you were. So there's definitely room for these kind of things, these conversations, and for this history to get out. And I'm hoping that those of you who are watching will be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to go check them out. I'm going to go look into some of these things, because it is a history worth studying and noting. Some of us never knew about Hidden Figures, about the sisters working with NASA till the movie came out. So it's really important that we get these kind of stories out and that people, begin to research for themselves. Cool. Now let me ask you, I was going to ask you, what advice would you give to aspiring writers who sometimes feel like, man, it's just a drag, it's a daunting task, it's too difficult to get my thoughts on paper? What advice would you give brothers and sisters out there that may want to write but don't have the adequate motivation right now?
Right. Go old school. Carry a pen and a pad in your pocket, carry it in your car, carry it in your bag.
All right.
Write down your thoughts. Write down every thought that you have. I got papers in my pocket right now, probably from 2 years ago, okay, that I wrote down dates and history dates and stuff, history dates that I still write down, and I go back and I actually look at this stuff and I take it home and I throw it down. I'll actually look at this stuff, but write down everything, write down all your thoughts. And the reason why I say that is because thoughts are very hard to retract and to get back. That's the reason why cops, when they come to you and they find witnesses and they say, write down a statement right then on the spot, because the thoughts are fresh, Micah. You understand what I'm saying? If you go home, 9 times out of 10, it's going to take you 25 minutes to go home. Do you know how much can happen between point A and point B? And by the time you get home, that black man may look purple to you. Right. Okay, that 6-foot man that just committed that crime may be 5'3" to you. So it's the same as thoughts. Your thoughts, don't be lazy. Just write them down. Write them down, because you can forget real fast. So every one of your thoughts, write them down. I don't care if you want to write poetry, write it down. Just pick up a piece of paper, look around, write it down. Just write it down at that moment, because you do forget. You do forget from point A to point B. And by the time that you get home and you start writing, you can look back on certain pieces of paper and be like, oh man, I forgot all about that. I forgot about that historical date. I forgot about that incident right there. Right. Let me write it down. Let me look back and write it down. Yes. My pockets are full of papers. Go look at my car trunk. My car trunk is full of notes. I'm scared to throw them away.
True. No, you're right. My pen is out of a ready writer. You want to have it on deck. Oh, you're right about that. And I found that to be true. Like you said, even when I was writing, I started, I would start the book, I would lose the notebook, and I'd be like, oh, man. And then I'd go get another notebook and start writing. And then I'd lose that book, and then I started typing. And before long, I was all over the place. I'm like grabbing bits and pieces here and here. And like you said, having paper everywhere. And when I remember it was a year I was actually working at a job, because I didn't start my delivery service yet. So I was working 9 to 5. And I said, I'm going to finish this book. This is going to be the year. I'm going to finish this book. And I got me a jump drive, and I plugged it into my work computer, and I just start typing and saving it to Word. Then I take it home and plug it in at home, be typing. Then I take it back to work, and I see people coming up here, click save. Hey, what you need? And I'm handling work, I'm back on the grind. But that, and like you said, just having a recorder. I remember even when doing songs, I would record through my cell phone. I would like, oh man, this melody would be tight. I need to get a keyboard to get to a guitar. And I would hum the melody in the phone and then play it back. And it would never be like what I remember. When I get home, I'd be like, the melody went doom, da doom, da doom. And I hit play and I'm like, what in the world? That's nothing to like. So you're right. The mind will slip if you don't jot it down on paper, record it, or have something. Now, let me ask you, what are some of the ways that our audience can get your products, as far as the books and different things like that? And what are some ways they could also reach out to you if they want to get you to come out and speak or anything?
Yeah. Hey, listen, my books are on Amazon.com. You can type in Frank, F-R-A-N-K, Zaaqan, Z-A-A-Q-A-N, Jordan, and you'll see my books. And you can email me, and trust me, I'll get right back to you. My email is ZAAQAN1212 at yahoo.com. Again, ZAAQAN1212 at yahoo.com. And I'll answer you right back.
All right. Awesome. What's up, guys? How you doing? This is Micah Dobbins, host of the Micah Dobbins Show, and this show is brought to you by none other than Tees of Faith 316. When I go out and about sometimes and I'm rocking my Tees of Faith gear, people usually read the statements on my shirts and ask me, where did I get them from? So now you guys too can order your own shirts from Tees of Faith, even the official clothing of the Micah Dobbins Show. This right now is one of my favorite hoodies, Thou Shalt Not Steal, still relevant, representing for Tees of Faith 316. Last question I want to ask you too, do you think eventually your books are going to maybe become like a documentary series, or they may be made for television? Because there's a lot of that going on right now with these authors these days.
Right. Hey, listen, you want to know something, Micah? My books are actually in 12 different learning elementary schools and junior high schools, California, St. Louis, and down in Texas, a couple of elementary schools.
All right.
In Atlanta, Georgia, also there's a couple of bookstores that carry my books as well too, and they're actually being mandated for certain doula classes. I know the book that I had actually written on medications in the CDC and the FDA, and letting Blacks know about the different ingredients that actually causes kidney failure, liver failure, and internal organs failure. That's actually been mandated for doula classes, that particular book down in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
But I would love, oh my goodness, man, if that was this world will come to an end. If my books actually, man, it'll be pretty much over with, brother Micah. If my books actually hit the big screen, you can forget about that.
All right. All right. Oh man, I know that'd be on and popping. Definitely. Well, man, I tell you, Brother Frank Jordan, we definitely enjoy having you on today and to have the discussion.
Mike, it was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me.
No problem. So, guys, what I want you to do is make sure that you check out the links below, that you follow and keep up with Brother Frank, keep up with the Micah Dobbins Show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe so we can keep getting the word out. And until next time, guys, we appreciate you. All right, Micah signing off.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Micah. Thank you.